the times where people ignore the red flags and say, let's just keep pushing, those are the times where you fail.
Blake Lively's lawsuit was already a bombshell, but when her own lawyer walked out, that was the moment everything changed. No warning, no backup, just gone. Why? Because Justin Baldoni's team dropped a savage 170-page takedown that flipped the entire case on its head. This isn't just drama, it's a full-blown legal collapse. Hold on tight, because what comes next will leave you stunned. How it all began. It all started with the romantic movie It Ends With Us, which had big stars and a bigger budget. Everyone could see Blake Lively. She was a rising star, and the world was at her feet. Director and co-star Justin Baldoni shaped the whole movie, not just played the love interest, but there was another process going on behind those camera flashes. There's something dark, something that wasn't planned. Blake started to say what she thought, even though she was known for having a sweet and quiet public image. She said she didn't feel safe on the set. She thought she might have been made fun of for her body. Then came the big words: sexual abuse, retaliation, and an unsafe workplace. In 2024, she sued, making her case public in the most shocking way possible. The news spread, and soon everyone in the world was listening. The charges against Justin Baldoni, on the other hand, were not going to stand. He denied everything Blake said and saw Blake's claims as nothing more than a well-told story. He made it clear that the charges were not true and that they were not based on any evidence. Hollywood quickly turned its attention from the movie's plot to a real-life drama that no one had seen before. As both sides got ready for war, the charges turned into a fight over who would have the best image. As the media storm rolled around, the New York Times got involved and wrote an article strongly backing Blake. Blake was shown in the work as the hero of the story, the one who suffered. It was emotional, beautiful, and made Blake very sympathetic. The kind of story that gets hits, makes people care, and sells itself. For a short time, it looked like a reliable source agreed with Blake's claim. But after the media frenzy took over, everything changed. Hollywood wasn't just watching, they were holding their breath. The fight went beyond a movie set. It had to do with power. The big question that still stood was, who was telling the truth when the news came out? Was Blake's claim true, or was this just a small part of a bigger game? But the turn of events didn't end with Blake suing. If you thought that was the big reveal, wait until you hear what came next. But just when it seemed like the dust was settling, Baldoni flipped the script with a shocking legal move: Baldoni's $400 million counterattack. Justin Baldoni launched a big counterattack out of the blue, and no one else saw it coming. He didn't just defend himself. His answer was a rocket aimed right at Blake Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, and her manager Leslie Sloan. A countersuit worth $400 million, not just one person, not two, but three names got caught in the firestorm. She didn't hold back Baldoni. Blake's team said the charges against him were false and were part of a well-planned effort to hurt his reputation. It was clear from the case that this wasn't just a legal dispute. It was also an attempt to damage reputations. It was said that everything was thought out. Baldoni's lawyers say Blake and her group did more than just file a complaint. They told the press what happened, controlled the story, and made sure that the headlines would be talked about for days, which hurt Baldoni's career and image as a whole. Then why show Leslie Sloan and Ryan Reynolds? The way of thought was simple. The crew of Baldoni says they were not just spectators, but also took part in the scene. Even though there wasn't much evidence to back up Blake's claims, they helped build the story, made them more important, and spread them all over the media. It wasn't just about telling the story, it was also about managing it. And that was what Baldoni's team said was the real problem. Because it was filed in California, there was a twist. What was the point of this? People in California are protected by false light defamation rules. This means that the person telling the story can still be held responsible if they paint someone in a bad light, even if the claims they make are not completely false. This was a big change in plan. A lot was at stake, and Baldoni's lawyers were in it for the long haul. Baldoni's group wanted people to be open and not just respond. They wanted to make public every email, text, and video that could prove they were innocent. They said they had nothing to hide. On Blake's side, they were charged, but there was no true proof. The plot was changing from words to facts that would either back or disprove each side's arguments. It wasn't just a case anymore. It looked like a real game of chess. And Baldoni was brave by launching this comeback, which no one else saw coming. But this wasn't just about Blake anymore. Ryan Reynolds was now stepping in to clear his name. Blake Lively's team fights back. When Justin Baldoni and his team shot at Blake Lively, she wasn't going to stay quiet. It was clear that Blake's side went all out when they hit back 2 days after Baldoni's shocking legal answer. Using California's rule against slap, they asked the court to throw out the whole case on March 20th, 2025. This law is meant to protect people who report things like harassment from being sued just for telling the truth. Blake's staff said that she was just that, loud about what happened on the It Ends With Us set. Her side said she shouldn't be punished for telling the truth about what they saw as serious accusations. Blake wasn't the only one breaking the law, though. Even her husband Ryan Reynolds wasn't going to let his name stay in the case. On March 18th, just 2 days before Blake's move, Ryan also asked for the charges against him to be dropped. His team said that the charges against him were false and were just an attempt to scare people and take their attention away from them. All of a sudden, the focus changed from the type of lawsuit to trying to get rid of everything quietly. But Justin Baldoni and his group were not going to give up. They didn't just ignore Blake's move, they crushed it. They thought it was one of the worst uses of the law they had ever seen. For them, it was clear that Blake's team was hiding behind the anti-slap law to avoid tough questions from the courts. It started out as a simple court case about harassment charges, but now it's a public show. People in Blake's camp seemed tense, and rumors spread that things were not as calm behind closed doors. The lawsuit was started to protect her voice and get justice, but now it's become a matter of life and death. Blake's side started to look more and more upset after being calm and sure for a while. Their strategy seemed to change from focusing on the truth to trying to get away from Baldoni's heavy defense. Things were about to get even darker. Baldoni's team was getting ready to drop a bomb that would change everything while Blake's team was fighting to stay alive. Brian Friedman's 170-page opposition. Then came the moment that flipped the entire game on its head. Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's high-powered attorney, stepped up with a weapon no one was expecting. Instead of a quick rebuttal or an ordinary response, Friedman dropped a 170-page opposition that shook the courtroom to its core. This wasn't just legal writing. It was a full-on takedown of Blake Lively's claims, and it hit like a thunderclap. For Blake and her team, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Inside the document, Friedman and his team went through every part of Blake's case with a fine-tooth comb. They dissected each accusation, each piece of evidence. But what they found painted a very different picture than the one Blake had presented. The opposition revealed that Blake's claims didn't just lack strong evidence, they were completely unsupported. There were no text messages showing harassment, no emails or photos that confirmed her version of events, no witnesses to back up her accusations. Blake's story, according to Friedman, was falling apart, but it didn't stop there. Friedman didn't just expose the lack of evidence, he called out the entire lawsuit as a carefully orchestrated public relations move. He argued that Blake's legal action wasn't about seeking justice, it was about making headlines, about controlling the narrative. This wasn't a legal strategy, this was a media strategy. And Friedman wasn't done. He made a powerful point. Allegations are not evidence. Just because someone claims something doesn't make it true. The only thing that mattered now was proof. Friedman's team wasn't trying to scream louder or fight dirtier. They were using the facts, the truth, real emails, real messages. They were willing to show everything to the jury, letting the facts speak for themselves. The move was brilliant. Show the court exactly what had been hidden, and in doing so, destroy Blake's credibility piece by piece. This wasn't just an ordinary filing. It was a full-scale attack on Blake's credibility. And as the court read through those 170 pages, it became clear. Blake's legal defense had a massive problem, a problem that was about to get worse. Because right after Friedman's team laid out their case, someone very important on Blake's team made an unprecedented decision. She walked away. This was the moment everything began to unravel. The cracks in Blake's case were now too big to ignore. With Friedman's explosive filing shaking the courtroom, the unexpected exit of Blake's lead attorney sent even more shockwaves through the case. Blake Lively's lawyer quits. Right after Brian Friedman dropped that 170-page document, the heat turned up fast. Reporters were everywhere. Social media exploded. The legal world was watching closely. And then something strange happened. Blake Lively's lead lawyer, Merle Conant, vanished. Quietly, no big statement, no press conference, just gone. People started asking questions. She wasn't in the courtroom, she wasn't signing documents. And then it was confirmed. She'd stepped down. Blake's top defense just quit. In the middle of one of the most high-profile lawsuits in Hollywood, lawyers don't walk away like that. Not unless something serious is going on behind closed doors. And the timing? Too perfect to ignore. Right after Friedman's filing exposed what he claimed was a lack of evidence, Conant left. It looked like she saw what was coming and wanted no part of it. Sources started talking. One said the case was built on smoke and mirrors. Another said even a magician couldn't save it. They weren't just comments, they were warnings. Inside Blake's team, things weren't looking steady. There were rumors of shouting matches, PR advisors allegedly pushing harder than the legal team. Conant was stuck in the middle, expected to win a case with no real tools. And when the pressure hit its peak, she pulled the plug. Her exit wasn't just about walking away, it was a loud message. And that message hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Because once your lead lawyer walks, the other side gets stronger. Friedman didn't have to guess anymore. He knew they were scrambling. Now Blake was left exposed. No strong legal voice, no shield, just a mountain of questions and cameras pointing in her direction. But the mess didn't stop with the courtroom. It was spreading. Because while the lawyer stepped down, another fight was exploding, this time with a media giant. And it started with one headline: The New York Times Problem. Back in December 2024, a New York Times article dropped. The title said it all. We can bury anyone inside the Hollywood smear machine. It was dramatic, it was bold, and it made Blake Lively look like the ultimate victim. For a moment, it felt like her entire case had been validated. Headlines ran wild, social media believed it. But there was a problem. The article didn't just say Blake alleged anything, it said she was harassed. It spoke like the claims had already been investigated and proven. That's where the trouble began. Because in legal terms, that crosses a line. Brian Friedman saw it immediately. He filed a suit against the New York Times, arguing they didn't just report, they took sides. He accused them of turning into advocates, not journalists. And once they did that, he claimed they lost their legal shield, something called fair report privilege. That protection only works when a paper simply repeats what someone else is claiming, like saying Blake says, or according to the lawsuit. But the Times didn't do that. They made it sound like facts. And that opened the door for Friedman to strike. He pointed out the worst part. The Times gave Baldoni less than 24 hours to respond, a bombshell article, published during the holidays, with almost no time for his team to push back. It looked rushed, strategic, and just a little too convenient. Friedman's move was simple. Prove that this wasn't just reporting. Show it was part of a bigger strategy. He linked the article to Blake's PR team, claiming it was all one coordinated media hit job. Not just damage, reputational sabotage. Now, a courtroom wasn't just looking at actors and directors, it was staring down one of the biggest newspapers in the world. And if Friedman could prove that the Times helped spin a false story, that wouldn't just break headlines, that could break the case wide open. But if that sounds intense, wait until you see what was happening behind the scenes with social media, secret threads, and the quiet war to control the internet. The PR machine and its implosion. While the legal fight was burning in court, another battle was exploding online. But this one didn't involve judges or lawyers. It was happening on TikTok, on Reddit, on Twitter. Blake's team had a plan, not just to win the case, but to win the internet. They allegedly brought in crisis PR experts, not just to handle press, to take control of the entire narrative. The mission? Make Blake look like the clear victim. Flood social media with posts that supported her. Shape the headlines. Shift the comments. Build a wave of sympathy before anyone could question the details. The strategy wasn't subtle. Videos praising Blake spread fast. Posts defending Baldoni? They started disappearing. Accounts that supported him reported strange takedowns. Threads vanished. It was coordinated. It felt planned. Friedman saw the game. He said this wasn't about justice. It was about domination. He pointed to Blake's publicist, Leslie Sloan, and claimed there were direct links to media outlets. Stories were being fed carefully. Leaks were being dropped just right. All to tip public opinion, not with facts, but with feeling. But then, everything shifted. Friedman dropped the evidence. Documents, texts, timelines, and social media couldn't ignore it. The story started cracking. Viewers re-watched the clips, read the filings, realized something wasn't adding up. What once looked like a clean-cut case began to fall apart in real time. The support that came quick started fading even quicker. The likes slowed down. The shares dipped. The hashtags disappeared. It wasn't just the courtroom that turned cold. The internet turned with it. And the PR machine that was supposed to protect Blake, it imploded under its own weight. But while the online fire dimmed, Friedman's real weapon was already in motion. He wasn't just arguing the case, he was setting the rules of the game. And the location he chose? It wasn't random. It gave him power, it gave him leverage, and it changed everything. But while Blake's legal team struggled in court, another battle was raging online, one that was just as calculated and ruthless. Jurisdiction power play. Friedman wasn't just thinking about arguments, he was thinking about location. And for him, California was the place to be. Not just because Baldoni lived there, not just because the damage hit there, but because California has a powerful legal tool, one that New York doesn't offer. It's called false light defamation. Sounds fancy, but here's the simple part. It means if someone tells a story that makes you look bad, even if the words aren't totally false, you can still sue. In New York, that claim doesn't exist. But in California, it's game on. Friedman argued that Baldoni's name wasn't heard in New York. It was heard in Hollywood. That's where he lives. That's where his career is. That's where the damage hit hardest. So if reputations got burned, it happened right in California's backyard. But it didn't stop there. Friedman turned his focus back to the New York Times. He said their article didn't just float on the internet. It reached into California. It landed where Baldoni worked, where the Wayfair parties lived, where the impact was real. And because of that, he dragged the Times into the California fight. It was a bold move, and a smart one, because California's defamation laws are strict, and they allow for higher damages. That means if a story ruins your image there, the courts don't play nice. And Friedman? He wanted the biggest tools at his disposal. This wasn't about choosing a courtroom with better chairs. It was strategy. It was control. By keeping the case in California, he wasn't just aiming to win. He was aiming to make it hurt. And with every legal step, he was pushing Blake's side into a corner. No exits, no shortcuts, just a brutal, focused legal push. And now, with the team crumbling, the media turning, and the location locked in, only one question was left. Could this case survive? If Blake Lively's own lawyer walked out, how much longer can this case stand? Was it ever about truth? Or just image? $400 million, careers, reputations? Who's really telling the truth? Like, share, and comment your thoughts below.